Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, David. Glad to be on your show.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to founding the RHL Ventures?
Okay. So my background has always been an equity analyst and a fund manager. Previous to RHL Ventures, which we started in 2016, I was with ING/NN, then Heitman Group. Essentially, I did a lot of public equities, emerging market debt, and multi-assets, strategies and trading, using derivatives with hedging. So my background has always been a fund manager and investing in companies through different, structures, either equities or debt or derivatives. In 2016, Hamza, my partner at that time, wanted to come back to Malaysia. And we talked about the growing, population or demographics or the young demographics of Southeast Asia. And we wanted to, a way to leverage or invest in the good ideas that some of the entrepreneurs were coming back to do. So about 2016 or end of 2016, we invested, we started RHL Ventures. In 2017, I moved back to Malaysia. My family's from Malaysia. And so again, it was quite a natural move to come back from Hong Kong, after being away for 15 years or so in Hong Kong, New York, Australia.
Yeah, very dynamic background, right? Life. Also, I saw that you represent Malaysia as a rhythmic gymnastic athlete.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that I can feel that usually I was engaged in the financial sector all the time. So it's typically finance guy, investment professional. They have relevant background in terms of education, even childhood, something like that.
Yes.
Right, so they are very focused on one thing, right? Everybody has the same blind spot. They don't have artistic sense. But your cases looks very interesting.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of different things. Gymnastics when I was younger, everything that you can think of. I think my parents wanted to test us out, right? Painting, piano, ballet.
Yes.
Typical Asian parents, we try everything, and then if the one you're good at, we will try to harness that. I think that's the beauty of what my parents have done. And after gymnastics, I went to school in Australia. I did commerce, then I did law, and then I came back to Hong Kong. I did equities, and I got bored of equities. Then I went to the US, and I did emerging market debt. Then I did derivatives. Came back to Hong Kong, loved it. And now, I'm in a variety of different things, right? So I'm on an education board called Charterhouse. There's a global dignity NGO that we do, that helps little kids. So there's a lot of different things. I think I like the variety of things. And I think that's why also VC is interesting for me. So you're always learning about new things.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people out there who envy your lifestyle. I mean, most of people actually, they want to explore, experience the different aspect of life in different profession, but people feel scared about the potential failure, right?
Yes, I think if you're not scared of falling, it's okay. And I always tell people this, right? I don't want to be the best in everything, because being the best is so tiring. I just want to be good at something, and I want to enjoy the process. People don't understand why I say this. But I think having a variety of everything, it's more fun. If I go to a city, I go to the city 4 or 5 times.
Right.
And you don't have to do everything at one go, right? Because it's so boring if you go to Iceland one time. I've gone to Iceland, 3 times. Right. We hike different glaciers, and it's so much fun.
Right. Agree. Like recently, I have a podcast call with somebody who are successful in business. He talk about trying to make a success all the time is not enjoyable life at all, right? Success is something like a very short-term focused, right? Yes. Success is not a good definition of life. Probably grow something together with the other people, enjoy together. That's probably a true part of the life.
Yes. Okay. You don't have to be number 1 in everything. If you're top 3, you're good enough, right? And I think that's okay. I think it's too tiring to be the best.
Yes. Improved, grow, evolve every time. That may be a better version of life. I agree. Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. I saw that recently you launched what is that? I don't know. Hibiscus Fund, and that's a part of
Hibiscus.
the Hibiscus.
Yes.
And then it's a part of the Dana Panjana National Program. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But
so
I assume that's a government initiated matching fund in order to invite foreign investor, right?
Yes. So we've launched Hibiscus Fund. Hibiscus is our national flower in Malaysia. And so the Dana Panjana, Dana means fund, and then Panjana means generator. So it's called a generator fund. I think the idea for Dana Panjana, or the generator fund, the idea is to spur the tech ecosystem in Malaysia specifically, and to invite foreign players. Our partner is Heitman Bank. They're one of the largest financial institutions in Korea, and for us, we've been working with them for a couple of years now. I think this formalizes a lot of things that we've done with them in the past. But the idea for this is, if you see Indonesia, you see Vietnam, you see Thailand, they have a relatively thriving tech ecosystem. Malaysia, I think, because pushback has always been, it's an interesting country, but it's neither here nor there, right? There's political uncertainty. There is there's startups, so the startups are not big enough. They're not too small, where they get too much defunding. So I think in terms of a funding perspective, the seed companies do very well in Malaysia. And then what is the next tranche of capital? And so for Dana Panjana, or for RHL and / Hibiscus Fund at this point, is to basically bridge that gap. So we're doing Series A and Series B investments, and we've got a sleeve which is 25% that go to growth investments. Our fund, we've already closed $55 million. It'll be a $100 million fund. I think we're likely going to do 100 or a little bit more, to be fair. And the idea is obviously to get more investments into Malaysia / Southeast Asian companies that are willing to come into Malaysia to invest, and to give Malaysia a chance, right? We've got a relatively young population, very educated, so we've got a good workforce that is also very digitally savvy. So the idea would be, hopefully one day you'll see more unicorns coming out from Malaysia.
Yes. Yeah. So your fund is domiciled in Malaysia, right?
It's domiciled in Labuan, correct?
Labuan, and then
which is Malaysia.
In terms of investment target, geographic market, are you focusing on only the startup based in Malaysia, or are you covering some country like Southeast Asia?
So we cover all Southeast Asia. To be fair, the mandate is an Asian mandate. So if we want to invest in Korean companies, we can and we should. But the idea is, we will obviously have some links to Malaysia. The idea is, again, the same thing, right? We see economic growth in Malaysia. We increase digital employment of the youth. The way, how China has created a lot of digital unicorns and digital jobs. We're trying to, emulate the same progress.
Right. So in terms of the sector, industry, business model, are there any interesting business model are you bullish about in Malaysia or the Southeast Asia?
There's three sectors that we focus on. One's healthcare. Because of COVID, you understand the need of healthcare, and I think we've got good hospitals around the world. But I think this is only for the privileged. So the idea is obviously to build good healthcare across the world for everybody, right? And I think equality should be the word that we're focusing on in this current generation. So equality to healthcare, to food, to basic human rights. The other two sectors that we really like is food, and the third sector we really like is agriculture. The reason why we like food, I give this example quite a bit. During the COVID time, so I cook, and I cook a lot. I couldn't find very good quality and sustainable food that I could get from the supermarket. So I ended up, WhatsApping a lot of the farmers, up in Cameron Highlands, and it's about a 45 minutes journey. And so the farmers had an issue with transporting the food over to Kuala Lumpur, but the buyers had an issue. issue because there was a shortage of good quality food, right? And again, we've ended up investing in GLife, for example, which is a food procurement company. We've invested in EP25, which does co-farming for young farmers who are agricultural graduates. So the ideal is then, how do we secure food in a sustainable manner? And, we try to give as much to the farmers, but we also try to, get it as cheap as possible to the users. And so these are the three sectors that we've been looking quite a bit, and we've done quite a bit of investments from the fund into these three specific sectors.
Yeah, I think it makes sense given I told you that when we have a casual chat, I used to live in Malaysia. So I found people in market always talk about Vietnam, Indonesia as a major target market because similar story, like a large population and growing young population and the consumers, young consumer group who have a spending power, etc., etc. But as compared to those countries, as you mentioned, Malaysia has received less attention, but I personally observed that Malaysia has a unique strength, right? So when I visited Penang, there are so many international call centers in Penang.
Yes,
they're covering the Asian market. It's different from the Philippines because Philippines they can speak English, but the Malaysia. Chinese, Malaysian, Chinese, they speak so many languages, so many dialects of the Chinese, Hokkien and Chacho, and then the Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. So Malaysian as well, so can cover the Indonesia. So that's a very, very interesting angle for Malaysia. Maybe some of the company can leverage growth opportunity, focus on that. That was very also a lot of electronics, semiconductor IT company based in Penang, right? International company, Intel and all those guys are based in Penang. Right?
Yes, I think, Malaysia is interesting because, in the 90s, we've had a lot of hardware companies and chips makers. So if you think about Wenzhou, you think about Intel, a lot of the people were actually based here. And so if you think about it, we've got great engineers, we've got very smart population, but we've been very good at hardware. So the next, industrial revolution 2.0 for Malaysia is then, software. And I think, from hardware to software, it's an easy transition because we've already got a lot of engineers. And also at the same time, we've got a lot of education providers. So if you look at schools, some of the best schools have a university here. A lot, even the big schools, Charterhouse, Marlborough. There's a lot of schools that is, English, high quality education that is, based in Malaysia. And I don't think, to be fair, if you're talking about Southeast Asia, the only other place that has such great quality of education is Singapore.
Agree. I totally agree. Also, some of my friends, including myself, agree that Malaysian is good at the communication. Beyond the language, right?
Yes.
So that might be strength. Yeah. So in terms of I understand the target industry and then stage of your fund, but what is the average ticket size, or also you are looking for any social impact you want to create by investment?
Our ticket size are typically $1 to $5 million. So we want a relatively small fund. And so the idea would be, 20 to 25 or even maximum 30 investments that we make out of this fund. Of course, also it depends on, how quickly we size we upsize the fund, right? But I think, you'll see very quickly, there'll be a new announcement very quickly. And so we can have a chat about that announcement in the future. But the impact that, we're looking to make is, I think with COVID, we've seen, again, to alluding to what we've said, just, huge inequality that has happened. So the idea for us is obviously to give back to the people that has been impacted the most, either from a cheaper food supply, basis, or we go down to the farmers and we increase more employment. So, the companies that we've invested in, I was telling a friend, I said, I don't understand why there's unemployment issues in Malaysia because, for our portfolios itself, we've just made a count the other day. We've got 1,800 jobs open for the portfolios that we've invested in. And we haven't been able to find enough of people to take the jobs up. I think there's a huge mismatch, right? In Malaysia right now, there's a skills mismatch, there's an education mismatch, and of course, then from that, that creates huge income equality. And so for the way we're looking at it is, if we invest into the young farmers or the young agropreneurs, as we call them, then, we're creating a sustainable effect, in a sense that, these young farmers now, instead of making 3,000 ringgit, they're making 6,000 ringgit. They've got enough to feed their families and also provide a good education for the kids. And when they have a good education for the kids, then there's a trickle down effect in terms of like, how do we give back to society? And I think that's, for us, very important. Then also, it comes to sustainability, right? We've invested in alternative protein, because I think the way we've looked at it is, currently there's 7 billion people in the world. We're going to 10 billion people. Not a great, like if we start just farming more and we start killing more animals, I mean, one, it's not the right thing to do. But how do we feed more people in a more efficient manner that harms the world less? So that's something we're focused quite a bit. And then obviously, the team that, we spoke about was healthcare. I think when you look at COVID, COVID, it's a big deal, but it's also not an unsolvable issue. Our problem was we didn't have enough of healthcare, and we didn't give access healthcare to everybody. And so the poor still had to go out to work their daily wages so that, they can keep food on the table. And then, so they cannot afford to be sick. But, these are the guys that are last to, receive treatment. So what we're trying to do is, create, insurance or portfolios of insurance that can be accessible to everybody. We make it as cheap as possible. We make, the corporates subsidize some of the insurance. And then after that, with these, then, like the people who are working in companies or even daily wages, they're able to access cheap healthcare. And hopefully, that helps elevate some of the concerns, right, of going to the hospital, and the bill is not going to be more than what they make a month.
Yes, yeah. I personally, I have a lot of friends in Indonesia as well, business friend, personal friend there. I heard that they are traveling to Penang and Malaysia for the hospital tourism as well, right?
Yes.
This hospital service is much better, reliable than Indonesia. Also, the culture, religion, and food are quite similar. So they, at the same time, they can have a good time staying at Malaysia, right? So that I see
hospitals are very good in Malaysia.
Right, I see that future in terms of business and industry. So beside the investment activity, you briefly mentioned in the beginning of this conversation about your background as a gymnastic athlete, but beside the investment activity, what else are you passionate about now?
I'm on the board of Charter House, which is a English school. The idea is for to create education to more people, not just the elites, right? So the project has started. We've just opened up the school in August this year, actually. So it's the first campus outside of the UK. And so that's something that, we're heavily involved. I like it because, besides education, they're also very all-rounded. They do a lot of sports. There's a lot of, career advancement opportunities where they teach you soft skills, communication, as you pointed out, job skills, like how do we do trading, for example. So, that's been interesting for me. Another thing that, I really like, as you pointed out, is gymnastics or sports. I've been very heavily involved in that for a couple of years now. What else? I do a lot of tennis. There's a lot of sporting, so I'm quite sporty. And otherwise cooking. So I cook a lot as well. So I think for me, Malaysia is a great place because you get a lot of good variety of food, and you get to test a lot of recipes. Yeah, I enjoy the Nyonya food. Yes. Nyonya, right? So fried rice and a lot of that's like a fusion cuisine, right? Between the Malaysian and then the Chinese influence, right? It's Chinese Malay influence. Chinese Malay. I just came to realize that. I mean, Malaysia has a lot of a fusion and blending of the culture and even racial relationship, right? You created coin, what is that? New coin, Chandia? I mean, the mixed blood between Chinese and the Indian. You call it Chindia? Chindian, right. Yes. Very interesting.
I can feel that they have specific, unique culture in Malaysia.
Yes. Yeah.
So, this is a interesting question outside investment activity. Did you watch the movie, The Parasite, or the Netflix series is Squid Game?
I've just finished Squid Game, so one of the things that so everybody's been asking me to watch, so I've watched it, and I think with Squid Game is an interesting dystopia, right? It's I think we've been so hung up about materialism and goods and chasing things that we shouldn't chase, that then we're in debt and very unhappy. So for me, it's an interesting show. It's quite gory, and so I'm not 100% sure there was too much blood. Wasn't a very big fan of that. But again, I think it's an interesting, the thematic of it is very interesting, and it basically talks about inequality. It talks about society chasing too much material goods, successes that might or might not make sense. I see a lot of people, and I see them being very unhappy about themselves, right? They're never happy. They're always complaining about something. I've got a friend who's always complaining about something, and I don't understand why he's always so unhappy when he seems to have everything in the world, right? And so I think these are the people that I think if they slow down and they breathe a little, they'll be less stressful and they're happier in life.
Yeah, when I see the phenomenon of the Korean content, even though I have a Korean background, I thought that this is a very interesting time this year and recent years, because last year I read in Financial Times, Asian economy as a whole has become bigger than rest of the world on a PPP base. First time in the 300 years. So that's a very interesting time, like focus of the dynamic of global economy and culture. We heavily rely on the Western world, America and Europe. But I thought it's an interesting time that, focus and the dynamic moving into Asia. So even in terms of business, instead of everybody going to the CES in Las Vegas, but 70% of participants from Asia. So why do we go all the way to the Las Vegas? Why don't we have something in the Asia, right? For Asian people. So that kind of thing, I thought it's a very interesting timing, not only in terms of a culture, but in terms of business model. We can think about the Asian business model, I think.
Yes. And I think, it's an interesting time, right? We've got thousands of years of history. If you look at, Korea, Japan, China, there's thousands of years of history, right? I don't think, I'd say like in terms of civilization, we're probably one of the oldest civilization. I think what has happened was obviously there was a bit too many of us, and therefore it was a bit hard to grow in an equal way. And the West are very good at marketing and branding, which we were not very good, right? If you look at it, Asian culture is work. How hard can you work? Then you're a good employee. If not, then you're no good, right? And I think now we've learned a little bit more from the West, which is we're able to understand and communicate ourselves a little bit better. There's also better branding and marketing about what we've done. And I think Asia being the next growth engine is here to stay.
I agree.
Again, extra, like if you look at the whole of Asia, the average age is 9 years old. And so, we've got a long way to go. And also, like, a lot of us are also I think this is probably the first time you've seen that many people that have gone to higher education. So people that went to universities, and not just universities in the East, but also universities in the West. I've got 3 degrees, for example. I think we're all more than okay, right, in terms of qualification. And so if you've got that and you've got a very varied background, and I think we've been privileged to have that background, then I think for us to contribute back, it's a good time, and I think that's the right thing to do. But again, I think you see a lot more people wanting to do that as well. People my age are now seriously thinking about what's the impact they make, right? When we make investments, how do we measure the impact? Not just economic benefits, because economic benefits will come with the impact you make.
Yes.
So if you do good, you will do well, and I think and I firmly believe in that. So I think Asia's in an interesting time, and you can see where now we're, even without the West, we can be very strong, ourselves. Even if we look inward, we've got a lot of skills. We've got now, this is the first time we've got enough of skills, education, enough of population, consumption. It's a good time.
I agree. Asia is having a momentum now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what is your long-term vision for your investment business platform and for yourself?
We've always said we're building RHL as a financial institution. When I first started RHL with Hamza, we talked about the fact that there is no one big financial institution in Southeast Asia that was recognizable globally. If you talk about T. Rowe Price, you talk about Fidelity, everybody recognizes these names. If you talk about Kookmin, it's recognized in Korea, but it's not that recognized overseas. And the idea was obviously, how do we build a truly Southeast Asian financial institution, starting first with venture, then private equity, then public equities, then advisory, or actually to be fair, we've already had some advisory work. And then building that, more like a boutique merchant bank / investment bank, a much bigger financial institution as opposed to, what you see today. So if you look at, RHL is no longer just a VC. There's a lot more parts to it that, we've never really announced. But, I think most people know that we're slowly doing it, and we're slowly going into the private equity space, for example, and, slowly going to quite a bit of advisory work. Some of it is under different brands, but most of it is actually under the RHL banner. Despite the fact they've got different brands. And then I think for us, then there's an aspiration to do a lot more. And again, same thing, as now we're going to second and third generation wealth. These are no longer the guys that are like building up from scratch. We see the wealth transfer from one generation to another. We're in a good time to obviously leverage off that some of the relationships that we've had, over the years. And then obviously scaling the businesses, not just in Malaysia or Southeast Asia, but also in Asia, with Kookmin. Then globally, right? I think for us, it's global aspirations, but hopefully a local team to execute these global aspirations.
Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting and great plan. This is first time for me to hear that the venture capital firm will want to have an integrated financial group, business model of the group, right? Very interesting.
Correct. Yeah. Because if you think about it, right, most people invest very early on. So if you're already there very early on and you've got the relationships that we're building right now, and so for example, if you've met Jack Ma years and years ago and you've invested in him, and now he's one of the biggest conglomerates or digital conglomerates in the world, why wouldn't you try to do more with this guy? Obviously, some of the investors have gone to Ant and other investments. Then the idea is, how do we do that, and how do we do more global aspirations? We haven't really seen that many people who's done that. Everybody is happy to do the venture and just do venture. But why do you only want to do venture when, you've got one of the largest companies in your portfolio?
I agree. Actually, my background, I work in the bank and then large financial institution all the time. But I believe that the traditional banking business model is what do you call? It's one of the business to disrupt. Otherwise, they don't add value. They don't solve the problem. They don't make an impact. That's what I feel. Yes. But that they are heavily protected by the government and license, right?
Yes.
So, that's the only reason they can grow bigger and bigger. Also heavily regulated, right? But in terms of problem solving and impact, and it doesn't add much value, because we used to have a lot of smart people for bank, but they realize that there is not much thing that they can do, right? Because they are highly regulated. They cannot make investment. Or the lend money for the great company, because they always go through the same process. So I think if some startup or ventures come up with an interesting idea to disrupt the business model, then it's a great potential.
Yes, and if you think about it, I think innovation is stifled by regulations. I think the more rules there is, the more the inability for us to be, creative. Agree. So exactly. So when people say, hey, now we're going for a digital banking license, I laugh. And I say the whole point of digital is innovation. So if we're going to go for a digital banking license, then how is it different from a normal banking license besides the fact you're on digital? And then, someone else, a younger startup will come and disrupt you. So why do you want to do regulated activities when the whole point is to foster change? So for me, it's one of those oxymoron, which I don't really fully understand. But again, like when Grab goes into it, they're big enough and they're no longer a startup, right? But the idea is obviously, how do we make sure that, we reach, the people, the unbanked population? How do we, not charge them $2 every time they do a withdrawal? How do we give them best access to investments? You're talking about private equity who's doing, relatively well, or probably the best asset class in the last 5 years or so. These guys don't get, a piece of the pie. Why? Because, there's regulations. But, why are you not giving everybody the same amount of chances? Because, you think they're not able to, protect themselves. But who knows, right? These guys could be much more, eloquent in financial literacy than you and I are. So I think, the thing is, we should stop being, I think, so I'm not a big fan of governments around the world. And a lot of people understand this. I think governments are there and they should be there as, to take care of welfare, but they shouldn't be there to dictate businesses. And I think, from that standpoint, I'm very capitalist, but another point, I'm very socialist. And so the idea is obviously, if we want to foster real change and innovation, we should be able to give everybody a level playing field.
Yeah.
And if not, then, then the people who have done well will always do well.
Yeah, I had the same conversation about the same topic with a lot of people on my podcast and also outside. But people talk about that kind of industry, easy to disrupt, is banking.
Yes.
And then the education, because everybody paid a huge paycheck for the university in US, right? But the benefit that they don't know. And then the hospital and probably pharmaceutical as well.
Correct. Yeah. And so these are the three things that we've looked at seriously, because these are the easy ones to do, right? Why does it need to be regulated when I'll take supplements for example. Supplements is the easiest to disrupt, because to get a vitamin C, it's you need some license to do it, but then it's not that difficult to produce. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if it's not that difficult to produce, why should there be a regulated activity?
Right.
Same as banking. I think banking is really the easiest, because people shouldn't be charged $2 every time there's a withdrawal.
Right. Banking is easy. And the telco business as well.
Correct.
Like the government gave the same license to 3 telco companies in Malaysia, and then they built exactly same infrastructure, same location, same tower, same spectrum. But then is a consumer like us, we are charged 3 times by the 3 company. Or redundant and then repetitive corruption. But that government having the regulation and regulated every company, giving them license. So in that structure, consumer become the hostage to that for the business model. So startup can disrupt that in some way without violating law. So same thing can happen in the banking, education, and then hospital.
Yes. No, I agree. I think the only way for us to grow as a population is for us to disrupt education. I think that's probably the most easiest thing. And then obviously then the rest is, if you've spoken about, right? I think everybody should have the right to equal access of healthcare, telco, basic needs, food, housing.
So give power back to the consumer, because the government by the license or regulation is they give the power to the telco. I mean, license the entity, but we should give back to the power to the consumer. Then it's easy to disrupt, and then we can create a much bigger potential.
Yes, and I think consumers these days are very smart. If you do something bad, it's all on social media. So I know whether you're ripping me off or not, right? I think governments honestly don't have much of a role to play in this day and age. We talk about policy changes and what we have to do, but the reality of it is consumers are much smarter than this. We should have a right to choose. And if you take away our right to choose, then how do you expect us to move forward as a society?
Okay. Yeah, I finished all the boring business question. My last question is, who is nicest person you have ever met in your life, and why, except for your family member?
Okay, I've got 2 actually. So these 2 are my business partner. It's Haizam and Hamza.
Mm-hmm.
They're the nicest people. They say yes to everybody. And then when they want someone to say no to, they ask me to say no to that person. So definitely these two are the nicest human beings I've ever met. They will say yes to everything. So if you want anything from them, you can call them.
Yeah, that's a great introduction and information for somebody who are listening to this podcast. Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for taking time introducing your fund and your life journey on my platform today.
All right. Thank you, David. It was great, chatting with you.